Alrighty, so today we're going to do the season preview of Orlando City. So just like NYCFC, they didn't really change that much when it comes to the roster this offseason. It feels like they're kind of running it back heading into this season. Though unlike NYCFC, they did lose one key player this offseason in Facu Torres. And as we'll talk about in terms of the players that they signed this offseason, and also unlike NYCFC, they're a little bit more active in the transfer window compared to NYCFC. It feels like they have found a replacement, and there is a question of whether if the replacement is going to be anywhere near as close of the quality that Facu Torres brought to this team for the past couple of years. But that being said, last season, yeah, despite the fact that they finished 15, 7, and 12 and finished in fourth place and finished with 52 points, and despite they finally defeat that narrative, I'm not able to get past the second round, finally made it to the Eastern Conference Final, they would not only feel like it was a huge miss opportunity, but that was the playoffs where they could had a chance to go to MLS Cup. I mean, after all the favorites were upset in the first round last year, Orlando City was basically the favorites to go all the way to MLS Cup, and unfortunately, they stumble in the final hurdle against the New York Red Bulls. And I even said before, I don't think they're gonna get a better chance in terms of making it to MLS Cup than that opportunity that they had against the Red Bulls. Mainly because, as I've said about these teams that had some incredible run in the playoffs last season out of the East. All those favorites that got upset in the first round, yeah, I don't think they're probably gonna get upset again in the first round heading into this season. And as I mentioned, the East has always been a bloodbath. I think it's gonna be the same case, albeit I know there are some players in the Eastern Conference that is no longer there. Some big star players in the Eastern Conference, especially to those two Ohio team, is no longer there. I still think the East is going to be an absolute bloodbath, and not to mention, I'm pretty sure Messi and friends team will not be completely imploded in the first round for the second year in a row. I mean, surely that can't be the case. But that being said, in terms of the head coach, it's Oscar Pereira. He's been there since 2020, and I know there has been at times some discontent between Orlando City fan base with Oscar Pereira. Keep in mind, he is still the most successful head coach that ever coached this team. And if you remember before Oscar Pereira, this Orlando City team was was considered to be the one of the laughing stock in the Eastern Conference, a team that repeatedly missed out on the playoffs, at time finished dead last in the Eastern Conference as well. And Oscar Pereira really changed the culture of that team overnight. And while yes, I know no Orlando City fans feel like he should do much more when it comes to the team that he is built, and especially winning a couple more trophy besides the U.S. Open Cup that he won for this Orlando City side. It was against a second division team that is. You know, no, I can understand why Orlando City fans are a little bit discontent, but at the same time, I think that they will probably stick with him at least for a bit, at least until things will start to go sideways with this team, which doesn't seem like that's the case because they still have most of the core piece heading into next season as well. Now, their GM and technical director, I want to mention two of these guys because these two guys are the one that makes the big decision for this Orlando City squad. So you got Luis Muzzi and Ricardo Marea as the two names that makes a lot of the decision and builds the roster of this Orlando City side. Now, looking at some of the transfer that they made, again, they didn't really make too much signing this offseason, though they didn't really need to because their squad is pretty much good to be a contender again heading into next season. But they did re-sign Kyle Smith to a new contract extension and also sign Colin Guski as one of their MLS Next Pro signing. And then one of the big signing that they got this offseason was bring in Nicholas Rodriguez from Fortaleza, and this is one of the U22 initiative signing that they, of course, brought. They also re-signed Carlos Mercado, and then the other big signing that they had, and probably the biggest signing that they made this offseason, is bringing Marco Pasalic from HNK as a designated player, and I'll talk about in just a bit that he is pretty much the guy that most likely is going to replace Facu Torres, and that there's going to be a lot of pressure on him to try to fill in the shoes that Facu Torres left on this team. Now, players no longer on this team, so First player is no longer on this team is Felipe. They decided not to renew his contract. They also had one of the players that got picked in the expansion draft for San Diego FC, and that player was Hein Ginkling Brusev. Then they also declined the option of Gaston Gonzalez, and then they declined the option of Georgi Kosicki. They declined the option of Luca Petrasso, who's now with Montreal now. Then they also declined the option of Abli Salam. Of course, Facu Torres got transferred to Palmeiras pretty early in the offseason for a huge sum of money. I mean, they knew that they had to cash in on that. I mean, that money was too big for Orlando City to turn down, and therefore they accepted that. They also traded Mason Starter, their backup goalkeeper, to RSL, and then Jack Lynn, of course, recently retired and announced his retirement um, just a couple of weeks ago as well. Now, look at the first 5 games for Orlando City. So they start the season by playing against the Philadelphia Union at home before playing at home against Toronto. Then they go on the road to play against the two New York teams. First against NYCFC, and then they have the Eastern Conference final rematch against the New York Red Bulls on the road. And then they play against DC United at home. So not a bad start to the schedule. It's a pretty easy schedule to start. Besides facing those two New York teams, that's not going to be easy for them go on the road. But historically, this team, at least under Oscar for these past couple of years, they always tends to be a better road team than they are at home. So theoretically, I say that they do have some easy games against teams at home. Don't bank on that because they did struggle at times last season at home as well. Now, looking at the last 5 game for this Orlando City side, so they go on the road to play against DC before returning at home to play against Nashville. Then they go on the road to face against Cincinnati, and then they return home to face the other Ohio team that is the Columbus Crew. And then for the decision day matchup, it's going to be a trip up north of the border to face against Toronto FC on the road. So again, not a bad finish to the schedule. Obviously, the two Ohio team, that's not going to be easy whatsoever. But they have proved that they've been able to beat those two Ohio team. I mean, didn't Orlando City got a big victory against Cincinnati on the road last season as well? And as I mentioned, those two Ohio team, them really kind of got weakened a bit in these last couple of weeks because with Cucho Hernandez being sold off to Europe, and then Lucho Acosta looks like he's moving on to Estudiante. Although I said that he's moving on to Estudiante, but now there's a rumor that he might actually stay in the league and actually join a Western Conference team. That is, yeah, those two Ohio team definitely have been weak in compared to what we thought that they could be once again contender and really the top two contender in terms of stopping Inter Miami potentially be the favorites of winning the East this year. Now, looking at the strength of this team overall, I think this is a well rounded team. When you look at pretty much every position, they're very good from top to bottom. And yes, that's included on the attacking end as well. That I know that last season, the beginning of the year, there was a lot of question when it comes to the attacking end, but for the most part, they kind of figure things out, and a lot of the reason why they figure things out in the second half of the season is because Facu Torres started to look like his old self. It feels like putting Martino Ojeda in that number 10 position was the right decision. I mean, it took Oscar a while to figure that out, but when he finally figured it out, as what I'm pretty sure a lot of Orlando City fans feel like that's the the solution to the lackluster offense that they had in the beginning of the season. They really started to go well. And let's also not forget about the defense too. This is one of the better defensive team for the past couple of seasons. Now the weakness of this team. Now this might be a little bit controversial, and I know no Orlando City fans won't want to admit it, but I think goalkeeping and the depth of the midfield is definitely going to be the biggest weakness of this team. Now the depth in the midfield, I don't think Orlando City fans will disagree with that. There's been a lot of rumors that Cesar Araujo could be shot the way, and he might be the next to go alongside with Duncan McGuire as player that will be sold off for a bit of a profit. But I have also heard that they do have a player injured right now in Wilder Cartagena that might not be ready before the beginning of the season. So they're a little short when it comes to the midfield. I think that's going to be an area that they might need to address before the season begin. But going back to the goalkeeping, and again, this is a very unpopular opinion, But I think Pedro Galese has hit the wrong end of 30, and you started seeing in these last couple of years he is clearly not the same goalkeeper that he was when he came to Orlando City. These last couple of years, he has definitely suffered a bit of a decline. And while he definitely found his good form when the playoff began, yeah, they need him to be good throughout the season. And if El Pupo was not going to be that guy to do so, Orlando City might need to think about looking for a new goalkeeper. Even though, again, I know a lot of Orlando City fans won't admit it, but I'm just stating when you look at even the underlying number two, he has definitely suffered a bit of a decline. Actually, a bit of a decline is an understatement. I think he has suffered for a huge decline compared to what the standard that he set in the first couple of years. Now, looking at the three big question for this Orlando City team. So going back to the replacement that is Marco Paslic for Facu Torres. Again, no pressure on Marco Paslic in terms of replacing the quality that Facu Torres has had. And I won't be surprised. It might take him time to settle in because that's always kind of the case when it comes to foreign signing. But at the same time, I can also understand why Orlando City might not want to wait, and especially from what I also heard from Orlando City fans, they weren't really that satisfied when they then the club decided to sign Marco Pasalic, especially using a DP tag on him. They didn't think he was a spectacular player enough to worth the DP tag on his name. So that just adds even more pressure now on him to perform because if he does not perform well straight off the gate, or at least perform throughout the season, then you got another latest bust on the DP category for this Orlando City side. And mind you, they've already have one. That is a big bust in Luis Muriel, who I'm pretty sure they're trying their best to move on from him if he does not have a good season again. I mean, he is definitely a guy that in Luis Muriel going to go down as one of the worst DP signing that we have seen as well, and a guy that they're really hoping that he can find his form, but I just have a feeling he's kind of hit the wrong end of 30, and he's just gonna continue to decline. But yeah, as I said, no pressure on Marco Paslic in terms of producing the same production, or not really the same production. I think that's kind of unfair to say because Facu Torres is one of those generational player that is very hard to replace, but at least put up numbers that is DP worthy heading into this season. And then, of course, going back to talk about the youngster of this team. So, how long could this team hold on to their youngster? Now, uh, for a long time, we thought that both Duncan McGuire and Cesar Araujo was going to be on the transfer block this winter or even heading into the summer as well. Now heading into this summer, that could still be up in the cards as well, especially Duncan McGuire. He is really working very hard to try to get himself another move to Europe. I mean, it has to be very discouraging last season seeing his move to Blackburn collapse at the very last second. And while he kind of had a down year last season, as well. Part of that is because he was battling for some injury. There's no doubt he's going to try to look good again, and maybe even win back his spot too, because he actually lost his position to Romero Enrique, and that's another guy that could be a guy that could be on the selling block if he can continue to accelerate. But another player that I even just mentioned a bit that might be the next guy to move on for a big amount of money out of the youngsters that Orlando City has had. It's got to be Cesar Araujo. He has been really good since day one in that midfield role for this Orlando City side, and there is a lot of teams, especially in Europe, that is looking for his service. And it looked like this winter he was gonna most likely be moving on to Europe, but it seems like Orlando City is trying their best to hold on to him, and especially with the injury of Wilton Cartagena, that maybe is kind of the reason why they're now even more reluctant to not let him go, at least until Cartagena get himself back healthy, and not to mention add some more depth in this midfield as well. And then the last big question I think for this Orlando City side is simply can they avoid not getting off to a slow start again? These last two seasons, if you're an Orlando City fan, it's going to be very frustrating to see this team off to slow start. And anytime when you're off to slow start like that, I know there's that old saying, it's not about how you start, it's about how you finish. but you also don't want to avoid slow starts so that you put yourself in a bit of a hole to try to overcome. And more times or not, we have seen teams that get off to a slow start to the season and getting off to it too much to a point where they just never able to overcome. Now, fortunately for Orlando City, they're very fortunate that the last two seasons they've been able to overcome the slow start that they have. They have been able to dig themselves out of the hole and really got hot at the right time before the playoffs begin. But ideally, I'm pretty sure all Orlando City fans are hoping that's not the case. For once, they're really hoping that they can at least get off to a decent amount of starts, so they don't have that pressure as we head to the halftime or the half point mark of this team, and just kind of asking question, what is going on with this Orlando City team? Why couldn't they figure things out? And once again, we're gonna hear about how a lot of Orlando City fans have shown their this pleasure over Oscar Pereira, and even some that want Pereira to be fired before things gets even worse for this team underachieving because of a slow start to the season. So looking at the expectation of this team, it's simply they need to have another deep playoff run. And again, anytime when you make it to the Eastern Conference Final, and anytime when you make it into the conference final, it's always very hard to make it back there, even with the same roster that you have, because you know the teams around you are going to get much stronger. And not to mention, as I said before, those teams that are considered to be the favorite in the Eastern Conference last season and maybe this season as well, those two Ohio team and also Inter Miami, and also let's not forget about Atlanta United as well. For this time, I always give credit to the two Ohio team and Inter Miami. I want to apologize to Five Stripe fans that I'm not giving them props as well, because I do think Atlanta United could also be a threat in the East this season, considering that was the team that took down Inter Miami last season, and they were way ahead of schedule to do so. But with that team also could be a threat as well. I mean, it's not going to get any easier for this Orlando City side. They're not going to get a lot of freebies like they did last season with all the top contender being eliminated. Most likely, if they want to make another deep playoff run, they need to get themselves not only in a good spot in the standing to get home field advantage, but they're going to have to face against the best of the best. And when you look at their playoff run that they had, I mean, though they, people will argue, well, they kind of did that with Charlotte FC as well. Well, they did eventually do it, but you got to remember they barely beat Charlotte FC. If it wasn't for them not scoring a PK late in that game, that would have been another their list of failure to this Orlando City side of suffering first or second round exit, and then not to mention the very next round when they face against Atlanta United team that clearly overachieved and clearly surprised everyone, but kind of had a bit of a letdown. You can see why people are still kind of questioning the fact that can they still get it done when playoff time, especially when they do go against the toe to toe against some of the better team in the Eastern Conference. Can they make themselves another deep playoff run? But there you have it. That is pretty much it. Looking at Orlando City in the season preview. As always, let me know in the comments below. What do you think of this season preview? If you're an Orlando City fan, what do you think is the strength, the weakness, and the free big question and the expectation heading into this season for this team? But until then, hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you do, make sure you guys do a like, smash the subscribe button, and yeah, I of course will see you guys next time.